Nah, man, I'll get on board with Pluto's not a planet. I'm calling Uranus Uranus. It's too much fun. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I am a 32-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. I read them as an adult because I was on a quest to determine if society had been sleeping on the series. I said yes, and now I'm seeing if society has also been sleeping on the Heroes of Olympus series, and I'm joined today by a special guest because I'm never on this quest alone. I'm joined by someone who you've heard on this podcast, and you also may, depending on the timing of things, may have heard or may soon will hear them on their new podcast, the Fandom Fixation Archives. It's Jania Stewart. Jania, how's it going?
It's going great. How's it going with you?
I am doing very well. I am excited. We're doing a late night recording for me. Baby's asleep. I've got the baby monitor here to my left just in case. If the temperature in her room gets too hot or too cold, I will leave and adjust the temperature and come back because I'm a good dad.
Good dads, good dads, good dads.
So yes, things are good. And I'm very excited to get into these two chapters where we finally have a new narrator. I didn't know how many chapters we were going to go before it switched because this book decided to switch up the game and not just do 2 chapters per narrator, but 4. So we had 4 Percy chapters, but now we have a new fun character. It's good. These are good. These are fun. I'm excited for Hazel.
A+.
So fun stuff. Now, we've already asked you your history with the Percy Jackson books and the Heroes of Olympus books. I think you've been on enough. Have I asked you your Nectar and Ambrosia?
Yes, I've done that one. I've done Godly Parent.
Have you done your Fatal Flaw, which you can respectfully pass on if it's too touchy of a subject?
Oh, no. You know what my fatal flaw is? I am easily distracted. I am so easily distracted. The amount of times where my fiance will be like, hey, could you grab that thing off the desk? And then I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I pick up my phone and then I'm scrolling for 5 minutes and he goes, babe. And I was like, right. Because somewhere between the middle of that, I was just like, oh, look at that. So I feel like I would be one of those people that if the test was don't pick up this shiny thing that's luring you and its whole power is to get you to look at it, I would be so susceptible.
Yeah, look, I mean, that might show up in this particular chapter. So thankfully, you aren't around our good friend Hazel.
Oh, thank goodness. I might have, the gym nerd in me might have been like, ooh, but not for money reasons, just pure, what a cool rock vibes going on.
Well, I'm very excited to get into these chapters. These were long earmarked for you to be the guest because I got a message from a listener and patron of the show, Meg, who months ago said, no spoilers, but I strongly recommend you have Jania Stewart on for chapters 5 and 6 of the second book. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. I trust it. Why not? I'm going to have Jania on at some point in the book, so why not this? And I just marked it and then didn't think of why. And now it makes sense. For context of anyone unaware, because we have had to say this, there's no normal way to say, hello, Jania is a black woman, everyone.
Attention all. This is my announcement. Please transcribe it to the sacred texts for the records of time. I am a black woman who grew up in both New Orleans and Houston. So I may not always sound like what you assume a black person sounds like, but here's your notice. Now you know, and now it's out there.
It is out there. The context is there, and I am excited to get into this. Yeah, I mean, the New Orleans angle also very important. So I can see why the recommendation was strong.
When I was first reading this, as soon as I saw New Orleans, I said, yeah, I said, finally, finally.
Yes. Now, let's pick up where we last left our heroes, which is Nico and Percy Jackson introducing themselves to each other in air quotes. And I was so hyped about the whole Nico reveal because, one, I guessed it. And I think that's very fun when I get the children's book stuff right. But I was so excited about it. And we did the patron live stream of it. If you didn't know, you can watch a video reaction of me doing it on the day we're recording this, October 8th. I did that yesterday. So very fresh off of the reveal and all of that. But I didn't even put 2 and 2 together Why did Nico say pleased to meet you? I was just so excited that I was right about Nico and everything that I didn't even think of like, hold on, wait a second. Does Nico not recognize Percy? Is he playing along with this? Is there a situation where Lupa has got to him and he's got to stay quiet about it? So I was so just excited that our boy Nico was back that I took no time at the end of the previous episode to wonder about the implications. I was just like, yay, Nico, ooh, cool, stuff is here in the future. Not even realizing that the final line was him introducing himself and saying, nice to meet you. Nico, what are you up to?
Nico is a Libra.
I know nothing about astrology to know the types.
Because that is 1000% the way you would greet someone who may indirectly have had a part to play in the death of your sister. Hi, pleased to meet you. Who are you? Very new phone who this kind of energy rolling off of him right now.
Yeah, now we will obviously get into this, but I was just, I didn't even think about it. Let's get into chapter 5, which is called Hazel. Obviously, we will retitle it. Now, a key important thing here is the Hazel description. At the end of the last episode, I was wondering, oh yeah, did we get a Hazel description? And we did, and I just didn't remember it because there was so much going on in those first 2 chapters with Percy that it kind of whooshed over me. But here is the Hazel description when she was initially introduced. Quote, the female guard was darker skinned with curly hair sticking out the sides of her helmet. So at first just could be vaguely something, but then within these 2 chapters, we get the confirmation that she is a black girl. Now, narrator Hazel opens this chapter with, quote, Hazel felt like she'd just introduced 2 nuclear bombs. Now she was just waiting to see which one exploded first.
Oh, great. Gosh.
A strong opener for narrator Hazel.
Could mean anything.
Could mean anything. Now, until meeting Percy, Nico was the strongest demigod that Hazel knew. She tells us that the other Camp Jupiter campers view Nico as this vagabond weirdo, but Hazel knows his power, even if she didn't grow up with him. When Hazel first met Percy, she thought that he might be a god in disguise, and she lets us know he's the most powerful one that I know now. He just had this aura of power about him, even if he looked rough from his Roughin' It adventure. Quote, he had the good looks of a Roman god with sea green eyes and wind-blown black hair. And at this point, I was worried. I don't want Hazel to fall for Percy because we had a little bit of them being kind of cute in the previous chapter, which I think is just them being funny and just, friends getting along doesn't always have to mean like, oh, they got to get together. One's a boy and one's a girl. But I was a little worried that we were going to get into Hazel falling for Percy territory, and then that's a whole messy situation. But as the chapters will go on, we'll see that's not really what's going on. But with this sentence, I was like, oh, good looks. Come on, Hazel. Rein it in. Rein it in. Hazel, as the narrator reveals, that she had ordered Frank not to fire at Percy back outside of the tunnel. And I was worried that someone was going to shoot at Percy, so I'm glad that Hazel stopped Frank. She thought that it might be a test by the gods. Quote, she'd heard myths like that. A kid with an old lady begs for shelter, and when the rude mortals refuse, boom, they get turned into banana slugs. Love a banana slug reference.
I love that. We don't see them very often. I feel like they were everywhere in that time during the early 2000s where everyone felt like it was really important to show us that reptiles who were yellow, blue, and orange were also out in the world. So there was a lot of tree frogs everywhere, brightly yellow insects or reptiles. This feels very that. I'm imagining luminescently highlighter yellow little slugs.
For me, banana slugs just always makes me think of when, I don't know if it was just my circle or if this was a ubiquitous mid-2010s thing where it was like, hey, did you know that University of California, Santa Barbara, their mascot, it's the banana slugs. How quirky. Which that does rip. That is cool. I feel like there needs to be a rule where you got to have more weird mascots. Too many wildcats, too many bobcats, too many eagles. We need to have more obscure animal and even inanimate object mascots.
There is a school, and I can't remember if it's in one of the Dakotas or something, but it's called Slippery Rock, and their mascot is the salamanders.
That's good. I like thematic ones is good too.
You never see salamanders really
But for Slippery Rock, it makes a lot of sense. I like it. Yeah, get more themes. Even I went to Rice and we had the owl, and we're a nerdy school, and you get the wisdom animal. Yeah, that works. We need to have more themes where it goes along. If your school is a certain thing, you got to have a name that goes along with it.
Yeah, LSU having a tiger makes a ton of sense. It makes a ton of sense.
Shout out to Mike the Tiger, whichever number they're on. And
I think they're on like 16 or something.
I think it's like 16 or 17.
Yeah.
And if you go to LSU, where they keep the tiger, like, because if anyone doesn't know, they have a tiger
habitat.
and they have like a whole zoo habitat. Mm-hmm. And if the tiger either dies or they retire the retiger, they get a new Mike the Tiger.
Yep.
And they already have plaques up for future Mikes. So like they have plaques up with like past Mikes and the years, but then they have like Mike mapped out to like Mike 30 or something.
Yep.
And the tigers usually have a good enough run. I think I did the math. If they do go up to like the number they have for the average like duration that each Mike has, I think they have it mapped out to like 2150 or something.
Yeah.
And like at that point, you're going to have to get a new plaque. Like the stone is going to break down. Right?
1000%. I mean, at that point, they might have built an entirely different habitat for him, but
exactly.
The plaques are kind of elaborate. Like I don't know if anyone knows this, but I got my master's from there.
Oh, nice.
So I was there when previous Mike the Tiger died and they brought the new one in. And it was like this whole like thing. They did stories about it on the news. Some little kids showed up and they wrote little like cards welcoming Mike. And Mike was like either like a very big, small tiger or like teenage sized. And one of the two, but he looked young. And so all these kids stuck their letters through the gate in front of the thing, like being like, "Hi, Mike, welcome to LSU. We love you, blah, blah, blah." And I thought, this is so cute. But you guys, I want to hold your hand when I say this. He can't read, okay? He don't know what y'all doing. He don't know what y'all doing. I appreciate the effort, but I'm sure he is so confused about why he can see less and less of the world around him every day.
He wants food. He does not want messages.
He doesn't want this, you guys. No, but it's so true. And like Mike the Tiger is like, it's a thing. And so in Bro Bridge, right before you get to Baton Rouge when you're driving, there's a gas station that boasts that they too have a tiger that outlived the last few Mikes. And so it's this weird like rivalry that this gas station has
with the Louisiana State University.
Right. And this gas station had a tiger at one point. Like you could stop, get gas on the way to wherever you were going and see a tiger.
Louisiana needs to be stopped. We have to stop Louisiana.
You guys. It's a real place, but it's not at the same time. It's such an unserious state.
Shout out to everyone who came to the New Orleans TNO show. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Hazel was impressed by Percy's ability to control the river, destroy the Gorgons, turn a pen into a sword, and stir up the whole camp. And also, a while back, Hazel was told that a child of Neptune would save her. Quote, "But could Percy really take away her curse?" And I'm thinking, okay, Hazel, what is this curse? We didn't know about this. We just knew you had some weird, guilty look. What's the curse, Hazel? We will see what the curse is. Percy and Nico shake hands and study each other. Hazel worries about what would happen if they began to fight. And Hazel recalls that when she first met Nico, she thought that he looked and sounded ridiculous trying to be all serious, wielding his all-black sword and calling it Stygian iron. So him being serious again makes her want to chuckle. And then Percy finally breaks the silence by going, I know you. And Nico cocks his eyebrows and says, "Do you?" while turning to Hazel like she will answer. This is a good non-answer from Nico. He's not lying to him.
Yeah.
This is smart deflecting.
It's a very Hades answer.
Hazel can see right through this, though. Narrator Hazel says, quote, "Hazel hesitated. Something about her brother's reaction wasn't right. He was trying hard to act casual, but when he had first seen Percy, Hazel had noticed his momentary look of panic. Nico already knew Percy. She was sure of it. Why was he pretending otherwise? And I'm also wondering, why was he pretending otherwise? What's going on? Tell me what's happening."
Nico is a Libra.
Hazel tells Nico that Percy has lost his memory, and then she basically tells him chapters 1 through 4 of The Son of Neptune. Hazel starts to get into why she arranged this. Nico had traveled a bunch, so maybe he knows about Percy, but Nico shoots her a look, quote, as dark as Tartarus that says, "Drop it." And okay, but also, why? Why?
Wow. I think if I was Hazel, I'd have been like, oh, hold on. What's that about? I'm gonna stop you right there. What is going on?
If I was Hazel in this situation, I would be bad. When people shoot me looks that are this intense, I sometimes can't control it. And then I will just be like, wait, what? What do you want? And then it just completely ruins the point of shooting the look. Nico asks if they warned Reyna about Gia's army, and Percy confirms and asks, who is this Gia anyway? If you haven't heard, we're calling Gaia Gia because the narrator of the audiobook calls her Gia.
He does a lot of things.
That's a great way to describe what I've heard about this narrator, who I believe they are actively re-recording the audiobooks of. I believe at the time of recording this, you cannot get one of the books on audiobook. I don't know if it's the second or the third book. There's one where you can't listen to it because they are making the new one.
Oh, wow.
So
wonder how long that takes.
I believe that's the thing. I don't know, but hopefully a little bit longer than last time so that someone can say, hi, you've decided to pronounce Gaia in the wildest way possible. So narrator Hazel says, Hazel's mouth went dry just hearing that name. It was all she could do to keep her knees from buckling. She remembered a woman's soft, sleepy voice, a glowing cave, and feeling her lungs fill with black oil. And I'm thinking, 1, give us the details. 2, it feels like Hazel is a mix between the last book's Piper and Leo. She's got the secret, I can't tell people what's going on of Piper, and the bad run-in with Gia of Leo. So she's a nice little mix. And I, initially reading this, it felt like she was just a very, I don't know, just like a very explain what's happening narrator, and there didn't seem to be a lot of personality. Now I'm understanding, there's so many layers to Hazel, and
she has so many layers. This is not a spoiler at all, but Hazel is a character that feels a lot like an onion. Like you just keep peeling it back, and you just find out like so many interesting things about her. Like I feel like as the books go on, I got all the way to the 4th book, but I paused while I was waiting for the books to be re-recorded. But her character is really so compelling, and like something about the Hades children of this series, I'm just like, the writing on them is so fun. They have such fun backstories and lore, and she's one of my favorite out of like the 7 or so that we end up covering, but she's one of the best, I think.
Yes, I am excited. I would assume that if someone becomes a narrator, they're one of the 7, but it would be funny if we get to book 3 and it's like, you didn't actually make the cut, Piper. Sorry. But I think she's fine. I think she's going to be in it. But I'm glad that Hazel appears to be one of the 7. That's very cool. It does make me worry about our chances of our good boy Nico being one of the 7, but Nico could be in the tier of Thalia, I would assume Grover and Tyson of, they're not one of the 7, but they're still here.
I call them the silver tier.
Ooh,
the silver tier.
Well, it's like I don't want to put them below. We need it's like the apples and oranges tier,
the minor characters or something like that.
Yeah, they're equal importance, but I want them to stick around more. I know Nico gets his future book series that I know has been renewed for a second book. So if he doesn't show up in Heroes of Olympus, I know I'm getting at least 2 50% Nico books because it's Nico and someone else. I don't know who the other someone else is, but it's Nico and someone.
I'm actually not sure if this is a spoiler, so I'm just
let's just not say anything. Yeah, let's keep that trapdoor intact. We'll just keep it going. Nico answers that Gia is the Earth goddess, and then he looks to the ground like it might be listening in. A+.
I just picture like a big ear like forms out of the ground, like and then you just hear like a sleepy voice being like, "What was said?" Like,
what'd you say? You talking smack? What'd you say?
Like, just like I wonder because. The thing that I thought of when, found out that she's the big villain, I'm like, man, the ground? The ground? I fear she might have won the battle already. Like, the ground, like, you guys, we're not as afraid as we should be.
I do appreciate everyone when they learn G is the bad guy has some sort of reaction of, I'm sorry, Earth?
Literally.
And I do appreciate that even Percy, when he learns this, he also has the reaction of, I'm sorry, the place we live, the planet? What? What are we going to do?
Let's all be glad she's asleep.
There should have been more of that with Kronos. I'm sorry, time? Time?
Yes.
The concept of time?
I hate that we didn't really get the time slowing down bit until the last book. I was like, this would have been great before.
Didn't get enough. Now, Nico continues about Gaia saying that she's usually in a deep sleep, but she hates the gods and their children. Percy is surprised that Mother Earth is evil. He just asks, Mother Earth is evil? Well, I watched a couple episodes of Captain Planet. She seemed nice. Nico proves it by sharing that she convinced her son, the Titan Kronos, Saturn, to kill his dad, Uranus, not Uranus, Uranus, which I know is the new way that they try to teach kids to pronounce Uranus so that they don't make anus jokes. Nah, man, I'll get on board with Pluto's not a planet. I'm calling Uranus. It's too much fun. You can't rob 12-year-olds of watching an episode of Magic School Bus and then laughing when they go to Uranus. Playing that computer game, which I played to death, and playing the Carlos Uranus level. I'm pretty sure Carlos is the Uranus level. And if they did, the game designers are perfect. Magic School Bus computer game, is Carlos the Uranus level? Because that's genius that they would make it Carlos.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There's a whole wiki.
It's time to get our Magic School Bus historians on the line.
Uranus is Carlos. Oh, shout out to my memory, and shout out to the game designers for knowing we got to put Carlos on the Uranus level, guys. We have to do it.
I have to say, I really hate that the English version of the name of this planet is what it is, because I think in like Greek or something it's pronounced more like Uranos or something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, that's way cooler, you guys. The O-R-O whatever. That's even harder. Like when I see like obelisk or like obsidian, I'm like, yeah, there's something to that. You guys.
Yeah.
Just some old like British frat dudes being like, oh, that'll get him. Like,
or it's the English thing where if you look at some fruits or vegetables or something, they all have banger names that every other country calls them except for us. Like pineapple is ananas in every other language, which is way cooler. And then we're like, oh, it kind of looks like a pine cone, so we call it a pineapple. This thing looks nothing like an apple. It's spiky, sure. I get the pine. Where'd the apple come in? Just because you were like, I don't know, that's a fruit. No, come on.
They just bit into it and we're like, sure, yeah. Right.
Gosh. Ananas is so much better. And then you can have bananas and ananas. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So he says the Titan Kronos, Saturn, to kill his dad, Uranus, and take over the world. Nico continues that the Olympians then overthrew the Titans. Percy says, that sounds familiar, but I haven't heard the part about Gaia. And that's basically the summary of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians' first 5 books. I've heard about Kronos, but who's this Gaia? That's basically
like, how did you guys sleep on her like this?
Chiron, man, just weaving. He was like, there must be 5 more books. We have to.
We'll talk about it soon, but somebody might be putting Chiron out of a job.
Or Chiron got to them. Nico says that Gaia grew angry when the gods overtook the Titans, and then she took a new husband, Tartarus, aka the Spirit of the Abyss, and birthed the giants. This is a good opportunity for me to respond to some feedback that I got that was 100% correct. I kind of had mixed up sometimes the giants and the Titans because I forgot that she had 2 sets of children and they were different because we had a different dad. So I do know that there are the Titans and there are the giants. I think there were times where I was messing up that Enchiladas and Porphyrion are giants, not Titans. And then there's other ones who are Titans, like Kronos and what's the Michael Fassbender movie? Prometheus. So I literally think of that every time I try to remember Prometheus. Have I seen Prometheus starring Michael Fassbender? No. Have I seen any movie in the Alien franchise? No. Will I eventually watch them at some point in time? Yes, but probably on an airplane because that's where they have classical movies, and I've heard they're kind of scary, and scary movies are less scary on an airplane.
I'm so glad you think so because I'm horrified by the Alien franchise. I can't bring myself to watch it. So when I heard Michael Fassbender was going to be in Prometheus and like I think this was like 2012 or something like that, I was like, cool, he's going to play Prometheus, the god who gave humans fire. And then I watched the trailer.
You had no idea that it was just the trailer. God, thank God you didn't buy tickets.
I watched the trailer and I was like, what a disappointment. It's like when I watched Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. I was like, the book was so good. How did we get here?
I've never read the book. Maybe I should read the book. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, which I think I've had this rant on at least one of my podcasts, if not this one. The movie should have 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
It was actually good.
Yeah.
No one wants to have fun anymore.
If you went into a movie called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter and you didn't walk out of that going, yep, Abraham Lincoln killed some vampires. Like, it does what it says on the tin. I can understand if you don't think it's critically acclaimed, but you should give it a 10 out of 10.
I remember when I was like 15 or 16 and I read the book, I figured out, I could be wrong about this. I think the same guy who did this also did like Pride and
I think he might have done Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And I've been on record here. That book sucks because you know what's good? Pride and Prejudice. You don't got to add anything. I tried reading that book and 5 chapters in, I was like, this. And I just read regular Pride and Prejudice.
I'm just going to say it. You know, I'll accept my lashings in the town square, okay? But I actually enjoyed Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, the book. I thought it was really interesting.
I think that's probably good because it's not just Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. They just take a good book and then they delete some stuff and added new stuff. I don't want less Pride and Prejudice. It's not like Abraham Lincoln is like they've added to the history. It's not like they've taken a slapper of a book and then taken away some stuff.
Yes, it was like so cool because they had it like interspersed, like it was partially the story, but they had it interspersed with like diary entries and like
that's fun.
News article type things. Like it was so cool. And then I watched the movie and I said, it's bad enough that everybody laughed me out of the room when I was super excited about this. And I was in AP US history at the time. It was brutal. I was like, you guys, this is so good. And everyone was like, no, it's not. It's garbage. And I'm like, I read the book.
I love our two opposite ends of the spectrum. You were the full nerd. And then I was just a teenage boy when that movie came out. And I was like, hey, Nathan, you want to go see Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter? And then we did and we loved it.
Yeah, because it's Abraham Lincoln fan fiction. That's great.
What's that to love?
What's not to love?
Anyway. Percy Jackson. Nico says that the giants tried to conquer Mount Olympus, but the gods bested them. And then he says, at least the first time. And then Percy, thankfully, I love that Percy always does this, goes, the first time, never lets any ominous thing go unexplained. Narrator Hazel says, Nico glanced at Hazel. He probably wasn't meaning to make her feel guilty, but she couldn't help it. If Percy knew the truth about her and the horrible things she'd done, Hazel! And then Nico explains, last summer, Saturn tried to make a comeback. There was a second Titan war. The Romans at Camp Jupiter stormed his headquarters on Mount Othrys across the bay and destroyed his throne. Saturn disappeared. And then narrator Hazel notes that Nico starts to look like he's worried that Percy's memory will come back. So now I'm realizing, okay, feels like Nico is invested in the two sides coming together, so he wants Percy to stay in factory reset mode. So I don't think we have anything nefarious. I think just it's Nico straight up recognizing he has to go through the same journey that Jason went through so that the whole plan can come together.
Nico has kind of struck me throughout the end of the first series to now as this kind of guy who, like, once he can see the big picture, he and Chiron are swapping shifts. He's very committed to the big picture once he knows what it is.
Correct.
Which is so interesting coming from this guy who, like, you know, needed to know the answer to things and wasn't ready yet because he was still a little kid and now he got some pain in his eyes and some a little swish bang and some gauges, maybe a Hot Topic shirt.
Oh, obviously.
He's really feeling it.
Oh, yeah.
He's really feeling it.
He's got the boobies, chunky elastic wristband. Yeah.
Some beat up Vans, the cloth all messed up on the front.
Yep, the checkered Vans. Yeah. Oh, of course. Nico then goes, anyway, after trailing off and says that Saturn, quote, probably faded back to the abyss. Demigods thought the war was over, but it appears that the gods' victory over the Titans has begun to wake Gaia. That was his explanation there. Nico says he's heard reports of giants being reborn, and he thinks they would begin by trying to kill the demigods if they're making another run at Olympus. Percy asks Nico if he's told this to Reyna, and he says yes, but the Romans don't trust him, so that's where Percy comes in, because apparently these campers think that descendants of Pluto are even worse than those of Neptune. Percy points out that Hazel is welcome here, so that seems confusing, but Nico says that's different, and Percy asks why, and then Hazel, a recent graduate from the School of Chiron's plot protection, butts in to say that giants aren't the worst problem, and neither is Gaia. It's the fact that the dead aren't staying dead. And yeah, of course a child of Pluto would say this. Seems like a very particular issue for you and your family.
But it's also got to sound so wild because it's like they would know. So if they're telling you it's bad, it's like, oh boy.
Narrator Hazel then says, quote, she was getting dangerously close to her own secret now, but for some reason Hazel trusted Percy. Maybe because he was also an outsider, maybe because he'd saved Frank at the river. He deserved to know what they were facing. Hazel, you've got me wrapped around your finger, but I want to know. Gosh, she's so compelling. Oh my God.
She's very compelling.
She's really good. She begins to say that Nico and her think death isn't, but before she can finish. Frank, with his PhD from the Chiron School of Plot Protection, comes rushing in. And then I also just had this thought in my notes. Where's Dakota? Dakota's one of the people named at the end of book 1. There were 4 friends, and we've met 3 of them. Where's Dakota? I had just guessed on a whim that Dakota was going to be one of the 7 just because Kelly asked me to call my shot. And now I'm not feeling good about it. Now I'm wondering, is Frank going to be in the 7? Is Frank going to be the 3rd narrator? And then I'm wondering, is Nico going to be the 3rd narrator? But I feel like Frank's more likely. I don't think we're going to get 2 Child of Hades narrators. I hope Nico's just along in this whole book, but we'll have to see. I hope he doesn't get the Thalia treatment where he's only in a little bit. I would love for him to be along for the whole ride. But now I'm thinking, okay, Frank, I thought could have just been like a character and he went away, whatever. But Frank coming back? I don't know. Frank could show up.
Interesting stuff.
I don't know. Narrator Hazel then says, quote, as it did every time she saw Frank, Hazel's heart performed a little skip beat tap dance, which really irritated her. Sure, he was a good friend, one of the only people at camp who didn't treat her as if she had a contagious disease, but she didn't like him in that way. And you kind of sound like someone who does, Hazel. I hate to break it to you.
She protesting a little too much.
Narrator Hazel explains that Frank is 3 years her elder and she doesn't find him that attractive with the baby face and muscle bod combo. Quote, he looked like a cuddly koala bear with muscles. And I just need everyone in the book to describe him because previously we had Percy say that he looked like a toddler on steroids. Now we have a cuddly koala bear with muscles. I need every single narrator to describe Frank in a brutal takedown.
I'm not going to lie. I kind of pictured that kid from Up, but tall.
And ripped?
Like just tall, like
Russell?
If it was a ripped, but like Russell's face.
I dig it.
And like that's kind of what I was envisioning for some reason. And I just imagine him like in his little Roman people's fit, whatever.
Yeah.
And just like, would you like any assistance today?
So apparently the people at camp ship these 2 together because they're the 2 biggest losers at camp.
Yikes.
And we learn in this chapter why Hazel might be a loser. What's up with Frank? Is it just because of this look? Because that's wild. If it's like, you're an idiot for being muscular and also having a young face. Like he's a teenager. Like, yeah, he looks young. I don't know. So hopefully we can learn that there's some other thing that makes Frank a loser and not just his physical appearance, because that would be too devastating. Now, narrator Hazel says that her heart hasn't felt this way, quote, well, since Sammy.
Dun,
Hazel,
dun, dun.
Who is Sammy? Are you bi? What's up with Sammy? Could go either way. Who is Sammy?
This felt like if it was a daytime soap opera.
Yes.
Like the inner monologue would have been, I haven't felt this way since Sammy. And then it would just go like a little screen and then it just commercials.
And then we would get the next chapter, which we will learn about Sammy. So she tells herself to stop it. She's not here to get a new boyfriend. And I wrote, so
Darn.
She's straight. Adds that Frank doesn't know her secret. And if he did, he wouldn't be so nice to her. And Hazel, you're not being so nice to us right now. Tell us what's going on. Frank and Nico greet each other, and narrator Hazel notes that Nico seems to like Frank, maybe because he's the only kid at camp that doesn't fear children of Pluto. Frank explains that Raina sent him to get Percy, and I'm thinking, Frank, this is not an important enough reason to stop Hazel mid-sentence from explaining what her and Nico think is happening with death. This is not good enough. He asks Percy if Octavian accepted him. Percy confirms, adding that his panda didn't make it out in one piece. And Frank says that they got to get Percy cleaned up before muster. Hazel is shocked that the day has gone by so quickly. Nico suggests that Frank take Percy down so that he and Hazel can chat, and Hazel gets worried but tries not to show it. Percy then looks at Nico one last time before leaving, quote, I'd like to talk with you some more. I can't shake the feeling. And Nico goes, sure, later. I'll be staying overnight. Hazel's very surprised that Nico's staying overnight. She expresses her shock out loud by asking, you will? And then she thinks, campers are going to love that. The son of Neptune and the son of Pluto arriving on the same day. Now all they needed was some black cats and broken mirrors. Great. Hazel's great. I'm all in on Hazel. She's so fun.
She's funny.
After Percy and Frank leave, Hazel accuses Nico of knowing Percy and faking it. And in fairness, he never lied directly. He just omitted Percy's role in the Second Titan War. So, could have been worse. They are now seated on the floor of the Shrine of Pluto. They're surrounded by diamonds and bones. And narrator Hazel says the bones were always there, but the diamonds may be her fault. Quote, if she sat anywhere too long or just got anxious, they started popping up all around her like mushrooms after a rain. All right, Hazel. telling us a little more. Keep going, keep going. She says the roof has several $1 million worth of stones, but the campers don't steal them because stealing from cabins is a bad idea, and the fawns don't go up there. And then I remembered, oh, right, the diamond from before. She got nervous, and then one sprouted, and Dawn went after it. Hazel then thinks about this close encounter with Dawn, and she's glad that she swooped in because, quote, she didn't need another death on her conscience. I'm sorry, Hazel. What? What? She's so good. She is so good as narrator. My gosh.
The way that she's written, oh my gosh, she was one of the characters that I would turn the page and it would switch to someone else and I'd be like, no, go back. Go back.
Blitz through to try to get to the next chapter. Yeah.
And it's hard because you can't always just like skip through and go read that person's stuff because
now it seems like I'm going to have to go 8 chapters without her if we keep the trend from before, and that's not going to be easy. But on the flip side, we will get 4 consecutive Hazel chapters, and that's nice. So
that's true.
Give and take. Nico's looking off into the distance. Of course he is. But he's actually looking off at the fields of Mars where the construction for tonight's War Games is taking place. So the War Games chapter on the horizon. Nico informs Hazel that he must keep some secrets secret because, quote, important things are at work here. So this feels like he knows what's going on. I don't know how he knows, but he does know. So as you said, he's invested in the big picture.
He has his ear to the ground.
He does. And the ground has the ear back to him, and they're listening to each other via touching ears. Hazel gets nervous and asks, but he's not like me? And Nico says no and apologizes that he cannot tell her more. He says he cannot interfere. Yeah, God.
He sent his intern.
Nods. He says he cannot interfere and Percy must find his own way at this camp. And yeah, that's what, confirmed my thought of Nico being invested in the big picture. Hazel asks if he's dangerous, and I just wrote my notes. He's going to say to monsters. And Nico smirks and says, very, to his enemies. Oh, so good.
CSI Miami theme song.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Oh, classic. He then clarifies that he's not a threat to Camp Jupiter and that Hazel can trust her. Hazel bitterly replies, like I trust you? And that feels hostile.
Feels
spice
like
there's
in there.
Some baggage.
There's a little bit of spice going on.
Nico fiddles with his skull ring, all moody-like, and then the bones around him begin to move as if they're about to reform into a skeleton. Quote, Nico had that effect on the dead, kind of like Hazel's curse. And then I'm realizing, okay, her curse is the diamonds. There's not some other thing. It's not like the diamonds are some cool demigod power, and then she's got a separate curse. Same thing. And she confirms by saying that the two of them encompass Pluto's 2 domains of riches and death. She thinks that Nico has the better end of the stick in this situation. And now I'm thinking, okay, it's got to be something where if anyone touches these diamonds, they die or something bad happens to them, because otherwise hers is way better. Sprouting money, that seems cooler than moving bones. But yeah, they aren't what they seem. They aren't just normal diamonds. Nico tells her that he knows this is hard, but she has the chance to make things right, and this is her second chance. And then I wrote in my notes, what did she do? How long ago did she do it? She's only 13.
The amount of times I asked myself, girl, what did you do? Like, what is going on?
She's great. She's great. Hazel says, quote, if they find out the truth about me, ... So I'm starting to try to piece things together at this point, thinking, okay, so no one here knows. Whatever went down is pre-camp. It's either a separate location or a separate point in time. Nico says the camp won't find out. Quote, they'll call a quest soon. They have to. You'll make me proud. Trust me. Ooh. I don't think he was going to call her the B word. I think he was going to call her a name.
Just trust me.
Trust me, wildly out of character.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, Hazel, as the narrator, lets us know that she knows that he was going to say Bianca. She knows who Bianca is. She identifies her as Nico's real sister. And I get that she's saying that sassily, but she is his full sister. You are his half sister. She is his full sister. So, like, I get that you're bitter, but also
y'all don't even look alike. Y'all don't even look alike, girl.
So then she says, quote, Nico might care about Hazel, but she'd never be Bianca. Hazel was simply the next best thing Nico could manage, a consolation prize from the underworld. And Hazel, like, at this point, I got to remember, okay, Hazel's 13. She's not going to be able to, recognize the situation fully. She's going to get moody and dramatic about it. I get it. So yeah, I understand. But Hazel, don't be so hard on yourself. Nico thankfully apologizes, and then Hazel asks, then it's true about death? Is Alcyonius? Alcyonius?
Spell it out. Spell it out.
Alcyoneus.
Alcyonius?
Alcyonius? We could be here forever.
We could be here for days.
I'll ask Dr. Moya at some point, but Al. Is Al to blame? And I just did the Snoop Dogg meme of, who? Who is this?
This series is so funny because the amount of times that happened to me in this series. The first one, I was like, this is a breeze. I know who all these people are. And then we get to the second one, they're just pulling obscure people. And I'm like, what is this? This is Greek mythology deep cuts. Like, I don't know this.
Rick used all the big names. We got it. We're getting the old ones. We're dusting off the old books. Mm-hmm. Give me the giants. Give me the titans. Nico thinks that Al is to blame, saying that things are not great in the underworld and Hades is stressed. Quote from what Percy said about the Gorgons, things are getting worse up here too, but look, that's why you're here. All that stuff in your past, you can make something good out of it. And now I'm thinking, was Hazel dead? And then resurrected? What's going on? He tells her that she belongs at this camp, and then Hazel says she doesn't even belong in this century. And I wrote, okay, so she was dead. And then it continues because she thinks about her past, and it is this vivid flashback that completely washes over her. And thankfully for us, the reader, we get a full-on flashback of her most recent birthday when she turned 13. It wasn't last December, but December 17th, 1941. What? Dun, dun. The last day she had lived in New Orleans. Dun, 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 dun.
Bow, 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 bow. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. When I got to this line, I said, yeah, baby, let's go. I did like a little run. I was like, both of my cities have been mentioned.
Yeah, you are really living.
I'm so like tuned in right now. I'm like, yeah, girl.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic. So that's the end of chapter 6, which I have retitled. And I got to do it just for the meme. This is like the first meme that I feel like I can recall. And I remember vividly when I first watched the meme of this, but I'm retitling chapter 6. I set us up the bombs because she talked about
oh, yeah.
the meeting of the nuclear bombs early on. But man, the How Are You Gentlemen, whatever that old Japanese video game with the all your base are belong to us, man, that has aged me. I think, are you familiar with this meme?
I am not.
Okay, John Green just did an explainer video on it in a recent episode of Vlogbrothers. So just watch that explainer video on YouTube of the someone set us up the bomb, but the all your base belong to us meme. That's like the first one I can recall. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's what I've retitled chapter 6. What have you retitled chapter 6?
I have retitled chapter 6, What Did You Do? Because no matter how often my good sister strayed over from, the task at hand, it was like she was trying to distract me. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, girl, no, get back to this. You keep talking about these dark secrets. Like, what is going on? What are we getting into if we have your perspective right now? Like, are you planning something like wild? Mm-hmm. But I think the first time I read this, I was like, how are you related to Nico? Like, how do you know him? You know Nico? Like, how does that happen? And so with that, I love how we once we heard that, it was like, got it. Mm-hmm. Got it. Another child that Hades had that, might I add, he's the only one who did not break the deal.
Yeah.
He kept his word, actually. He just stashed his kids in a hotel for a while, but
mm-hmm.
He kept up his end of the deal.
He did. So we're going to take our break here for our mid-roll break. This is the first time I keep forgetting to say it on stage. We've had 2 live shows and I've forgotten to do it, but what we're titling the mid-roll break, there's a lot of options for the Son of Neptune. There was the Sum of Neptune. There was a lot of different things. The one that we're going with is, I think, the more logical choice, which is the Son of Fortune, because Son of Neptune, Son of Fortune, like you got to pronounce it a little funkily, but the spelling is there. The one that I wanted to do in my heart of hearts is the Son of Doubloons. Just but like Fortune, Neptune, like doubloon does sound more like Neptune, but Fortune looks more like Neptune.
Oh, true.
It's between those two, and maybe at some point I'll just switch to Son of Doubloons, but at least for now, it's the Son of Fortune. And that can kind of work just because the mid-roll break is not just ads. There's so many other fun updates and stuff. There's lots of good things going on. But regardless, take on a mid-roll break, and then we'll come back to discuss Chapter 7. Hello and welcome to the Son of Fortune Dallas edition. recording this on my phone in my mom's car edition. Very special set of circumstances here. So I am in Dallas because we just did the live show last night, and I've got the show in Austin later today, and I will be driving from Dallas to Austin, but I'm a bit held up because my lovely sister Megan cut her finger open and is in the ER, and I drove her there like the good brother that I am. Because of that, I am going to make this one quick and short and lightly edited so that I can finish up the episode, from the hospital. So Megan's doing all right. Everything's chill. And she said it's okay if I put this in the episode. But I am going to keep this brief, and I'm not going to have the patron names and stuff because I'm just trying to get this episode up so that I can just be there for Megan and then get my whole situation to Austin to do a live show tonight. Fun times here. It's the holiday season. So here's just a couple of quick updates. First up, there are 2 corrections in this episode that I need to make. First, we said that the University of California, Santa Barbara is the Banana Slugs. It is University of California, Santa Cruz. My apologies. And second, we said that LSU is on Mike the Tiger 17. They are on Mike the Tiger 7. Those are the 2. We messed up college stuff. I guess we specifically messed up college mascot stuff 2 times in this episode. If I had a nickel for every time that happened, I'd have 2, but that would be a lot. But those are the corrections for this episode. Also, we've got live shows coming up. As mentioned, got an Austin show today. And also we've got shows booked so far for February through May, the beginning of May of 2025. We've got shows in the US and Canada. You should come through to those shows. We've got a whole Midwest run going. We've got some stuff all up and down the East Coast that does go into Canada. We've got a Montreal show. So if you want to get tickets to any of those shows, head on over to thenewsolympian.com/live. Some tickets are going pretty fast. For example, Richmond, Virginia is already over 40% sold out. So if you're thinking about tickets, I would say hop on it. And that is where you can get all of that information about where the shows are, when they start, all that kind of stuff. thenewsolympian.com/live. Other things, this episode is coming out around the holiday season, and if you need to get some last-minute gifts where it's past the shipping window so stuff's not going to arrive in time, you can get some instant stuff that is TNO related. First and foremost, you can now gift someone a Patreon membership, so that's pretty cool. Patreon has information about how you can do that. I've posted something on the TNO Patreon where I just kind of shared Patreon's post. So there's that. There's also digital items on our merch store at thenewsolympian.com/merch. And on the Patreon, there's the Patreon shop. So when you go to the TNO Patreon, thenewsolympian.com/Patreon, you'll click the link. There's a subsection of the Patreon called shop. And we have 2 live show recordings there. There's also some live show recordings on the TNO website. There's also digital things where we've got like the ringtone. You can get the intro song as a ringtone. There's wallpaper backgrounds and stuff where these graphic designers made really cool phone wallpapers. There's all sorts of cool stuff that you can get, and you'll get it instantly so you don't have to worry about shipping times. One other fun note about this episode, the timing of it is perfect. The world works in mysterious ways, as it always does with TNO guesting. Recently this week, I was at Jania's wedding. It was lovely. It was wonderful. It was so nice to see her. So the timing of this was fantastic. You may have seen on Instagram that the announcement post for this episode was photos from that wedding. So if you want to go and wish Jania a happy marriage, go and do so. I was so happy that I was able to be there for it. It was wonderful and lovely. And it's just so perfectly funny how things timed out to where I was at her wedding on Thursday of the previous week, and now Monday her episode comes out. How lovely, how fantastic. Now, I mentioned the Patreon, but I also did mention that I am tight on time and internet access. So instead of listing off the names of the people who have joined the Patreon most recently, I will include your names in our next Patreon breakdown, which will be on next Monday's episode on the 23rd. Thank you for understanding. And then just a programming note, there will not be an episode on December 30th. December is a 5-Monday month, so I'll be taking that 5th Monday off. And I might post something to the feed, but maybe not because it's the holidays. But no matter what, I will be donating to a charity. And if I don't talk about that on December 30th, I'll talk about it in the first episode in January. So I think that covers everything. Again, interesting set of circumstances here. So thank you for understanding. And now is the point of the episode where you will hear words from a few sponsors to make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster, unless you're listening on Patreon where you get access to ad-free episodes. So if you're listening in Dallas, don't be surprised if you hear an ad about, I don't know, the Cowboys. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back into this episode of The New Olympian. And we're back, and we're here to discuss Chapter 7, which is also called Hazel, but of course we will retitle it. So, it's full flashback. So in a rare instance, I have written all my notes here in past tense instead of present tense, because it's all from the past. So it opens with, quote, Hazel was walking home alone from the riding stables. Despite the cold evening, she was buzzing with warmth. Sammy had just kissed her on the cheek. And at first I was like, oh, how cute. And then I was like, oh no, Sammy, oh no, Sammy. So it's been a mixed bag of a day. The school kids made fun of her about her mom by calling her a witch. This is not a new occurrence, as rumors had been spreading about her curse. Quote, her school was called St. Agnes Academy for Colored Children and Indians, a name that hadn't changed in 100 years. Just like its name, the place masked a whole lot of cruelty under a thin veneer of kindness. So, all right, feels like Rick's doing all right. I guess from your perspective, is Rick doing a good job?
I thought that this was a very interesting way to let people know what Hazel might look like.
Yeah.
I think that, like, thinking that this is 1941 New Orleans, very interesting. But I also appreciate, like, you can't write about New Orleans in 1941, have your character be not white and, like, not have this addressed at all. But I thought it was such an interesting way to, like, drop that first little nugget that, like, she's not white. We don't know if she is, indigenous or if she's black. We don't know, but we certainly know she's not white. And I thought that was just like, I feel like with building up how he describes the characters this time around, he drops like little things here and there, and then we'll drop some big thing at the end, and you're like, oh.
Right. Like I had talked about how the way that we learn Frank is Asian is by Raina calling him first name, last name, but she calls everybody first name, last name. So it fits without being forced. Mm-hmm. And this works out well too, because yes, you're right. The school name is dropped, but then one of the next lines after is narrator Hazel saying that she was shocked that the other black kids would be so mean to her since they also had to deal with getting teased all the time. So that's a good way of you as the reader going, oh, okay, she's black, as opposed to, one of the lines being like, Hazel, a black girl.
Yeah, and I love that, like, it adds so much context to, like, how you see her. Like, you're already beginning to form, like, some interesting vibes about her. Like, you're like, okay, people are bullying you and calling you a witch, and also you're a black kid, and also it's New Orleans, and also you go to a segregated school. Like, immediately there's a lot of, like, interesting characterization happening.
Mm-hmm. So, continuing with the teasing, apparently people would yell at her, steal her lunch, and ask her for her cursed diamonds. They would push her at the water fountain. They would throw rocks at her at the playground. Seems brutal. She never gave them diamonds or gold because she didn't hate them that much. So I'm thinking at this point, okay, yeah, you die if you touch these things.
Yeah.
Maybe not that intense.
Yeah. But. And I also like an interesting way to show what kind of person she is, that she's like, I don't hate anybody that much, after describing all these awful things that these kids have done.
Right. She recognizes her power, but also it is a way to describe, like, she knows what she can do. It's like, I'm not completely ruling it out, but I do know that bar is very high to cross. Right. So, continuing on, she does take solace in having one friend, Sammy, and that is enough. Sammy would joke that he was the perfect St. Agnes student. Quote, he was Mexican-American, so he considered himself colored and Indian. And this is me for the first time realizing that Mexicans are indigenous Americans, because North America. Right? Like, that's what this is going for, yeah?
I think what he might be hinting at with that is that I know... And people who are like actually study Mexican American or Chicano history, please chime in. But I know that during like the mid 1900s, there was this movement to try to figure out if Latinx people were considered white or colored, because you can be a white person and be Mexican, or you can be a black person and be Mexican, or indigenous and be Mexican. So there was like this movement, I guess, to try to figure out what should we be classifying these people as. And so like the results from that ended up in the, like, when you're filling out a job application and they ask like what your race and ethnicity is, right, and it starts off and says, are you Latino or whatever.
Yeah, it's like Hispanic, non-white or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I know that that's a very condensed and probably really reductive summary of things, but I think because of the time that this book is set, that he may be someone who is Mexican, but probably gets mistaken for being black or indigenous. Like maybe he is Mexican, but he is obviously not white, if that makes sense.
Got it. I thought it was just because, and I hate that I don't have a better understanding of actual American history and what happened with expanding to the West and all that kind of stuff. But like, I just like would have to know the actual like definition of an indigenous American, because it wouldn't just be like from the United States of America. Like, wouldn't it be North America? So like, wouldn't Mexico be a part of that? And then there was like parts that were Mexico, like Texas, and then became part of the US. So like in theory.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like if the people he descended from were indigenous when Mexico took up California and Texas and all that, then yeah, I think I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. And just from a very quick Google, there is a thing on Wikipedia that just says, genetic studies have found that most Mexicans are of partial indigenous heritage. According to the National Indigenous Institute and the National Institute of Indigenous Peoples, in 2012, the indigenous populations were approximately 50 million people divided into 68 ethnic groups. There's also a Reddit thread here where someone is asking, am I Native American or Mexican? And then a comment says, Mexicans are Native American. We're indigenous to North America. So yes, you're Native American / indigenous from Mexico, aka Mexican. So, okay.
Maybe so.
Anyone who knows more, email
Please,
me.
Anyone.
Let me know. I'm so angry that my U.S. history class did not teach me stuff
they
like
really
this.
Skim right on over this.
Yada yada, Trail of Tears, yada yada. Like, yeah, it's not well explained. I feel like whenever my daughter starts getting history textbooks, I think I'm going to read them for fun. Just like see what they say. What's the Trump chapter going to be? Like, it's going to be nuts.
Did you have to take a Texas history class? Like, were you already?
No, because thank God,
I had to do that.
I moved to Texas
grade.
after 7th grade is when everyone takes it, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't move until high school. And I remember ever in my freshman year when I was the new kid from Jersey, they were all like, oh, did you have to take New Jersey history? And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, we took Texas history in 7th grade. I was like, you guys are the most self-centered pieces of crap. And I bet your 7th grade Texas history textbook didn't tell you that you seceded from Mexico because Mexico abolished slavery. And you were like, no, we want to keep that. So we're seceding. Always conveniently left out of Texas history when they brag about seceding.
They're a little vague. They're real vague about that. I remember it being like, oh, they still wanted to maintain their American customs, but didn't want to listen to like the rules that Mexico laid out. It was always like really dancing around it.
There's a rest stop in Texas outside of Houston where the theme of it is all about Texas seceding from Mexico, and they don't say it. Like it's this historical rest stop thing dedicated to this one thing, and they don't mention it. Nuts.
It's wild. And it's also so funny because there are some people in Texas who are like, yeah, we should secede again. And I'm like, you guys were so bad at it. You couldn't even last 5 years. You were broke the whole time. Let's think, guys. Let's really think here. Okay.
Remember the Alamo isn't remember the cool Alamo.
Yes.
The cool, good thing that happened.
And once I found out that the people at the Alamo were there because they really didn't want to let go of the people they enslaved. When I found out they all died in 7th grade, I was like, oh no, so sad, because we had to watch the Alamo movie and it was kind of good. And like, we were like, oh, no. And then I got older and said, no, wait a minute. I didn't know all
Texas
this.
does this with slogans. They do this with Remember the Alamo, and then also Don't Mess with Texas.
Don't Mess with
Texas. That was
Texas.
an anti-littering campaign.
Don't tread on me. Come and take it. All of those, you have Texas to thank for that. People who like to put those stickers on your pickup trucks. Just know your history, okay?
Don't Mess with Texas was about littering. It's not about being tough and cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what is actually cool? Not littering. Don't do it. Don't mess with Texas. Don't mess with anywhere.
Yeah. Don't mess.
Just don't mess. Anyway. Percy Jackson. Now, we are back. Where were we? Describing Sammy. Here, the description of Sammy from Hazel's quote, he wasn't big or strong, but he had a crazy smile and he made Hazel laugh. And this is peak. She let me hit it because I'm goofy. Energy.
Oh my gosh. I will say there's something that I just find so charming about when someone is describing like how someone laughs or how they smile and how it's like, it's this silly, big, goofy little grin. And I'm just like, oh, they're cheesing. Like, I just know he's a jokester. Like,
yep.
I feel like just from how that line is written, even though we've like barely met Sammy, we're like, oh, he's probably a goofy guy.
Yeah, we get the vibe immediately. Rick is very good at this. So that afternoon, he brought Hazel to the stables where he worked as a groom. Do you know what a groom is at the stables? Does that just mean like a help do stuff around the stables kind of guy?
It's pretty much kind of what it sounds like. So basically my understanding of it is they're the ones
who marry the horses.
They stand on top of a cake. I think they're the ones who just like brush the horses and keep them looking nice.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, just
groom.
Yeah. I think that's their job. They brush their
Gotcha.
tails and they brush their little manes and their fur and stuff, and keep them looking fancy.
So he is a groom at a whites only riding club, meaning it's got no swag. Whites only riding club. But it's closed on weekends, and with the ongoing war, word on the street was that the club might have to shut down until the war ended. Sammy would sneak Hazel in to care for the horses and ride occasionally. Hazel's a horse girl. People, cats, dogs, even hamsters don't like her, but when she's riding a horse, she almost feels free of her curse. She rode a stallion that day so quickly that Sammy joked that she was trying to run away from him for being ugly. And despite the cold in December, they had a picnic under a magnolia tree. And I'm thinking, how are these 13-year-olds so cute, and how do they have so much game? At 13, I was like, hey, you want to go to a movie? And like, that was it. Or, hey, do you want to go to the school dance? And we both go to the same school anyway? Like, I had no game. This is so much game.
Oh,
my
yeah.
gosh.
Oh, yeah. He's a little bit of a charmer. Sammy is definitely a charmer, I think. I can honestly say if I was a kid who worked at a horse thing and I knew that the girl I was crushing on also liked horses.
Yeah, dude.
Listen, that would have been Disney Channel levels of like DCOM original right there.
Yes.
Honestly.
That's a good one. Yeah.
There's a Disney Channel horse girl movie called Horse Sense.
Okay. Didn't know this. I'll have to watch it at some point.
Yeah.
Sammy brought Hazel a birthday cupcake, which Hazel found sweet, even though it got crushed along the ride. They break it in half and share it, and Sammy said that he wished he could fight in the war. Hazel said that she would write him letters if he did. He then swiftly planted a kiss on her and wished her a happy birthday, and it was a quick peck on the cheek, but it made Hazel feel weightless, and she was so smitten she couldn't fully recall their goodbye other than his classic line of "see you tomorrow," which turned out to be a lie.
I think that the way this is written is so cute compared up against what she described seeing on the sidewalks about guys who actually did go enlist in the war and were talking about, what they were going to do or proposing to their girlfriends and they're about to get shipped off. And I was just like, the way that parallel is he wants to go to war but can't. And she says she'll write letters just like she mentions the other girls do. And as soon as she says that, obviously they're 13, so they're not proposing, but he gives her a kiss on the cheek, and I'm just like,
It's really cute.
This is adorable.
Really, really cute. So Hazel went home to the French Quarter at dark, and she, at this time, lived with her mother, quote, Queen Marie, she liked to be called. Don't like that. But then we learn why. I guess it's her performance stage. But if Hazel has to call her that, don't like that. They lived in an apartment above a jazz club, and it was festive around in the neighborhood despite the war going on. The area is filled with new recruits looking forward to finishing off the Japanese. What about the Nazis? You're not excited to fight them? Huh?
Not a peep.
Well, because this was 1941, right? World War II ended in 45. Okay, yeah, so it's not late enough to be at the point where, because wasn't there a point where it was still Japan, like we'd be in the Nazis and Japan was still going on? Like that was like the very end.
Well, yeah, in terms of the conflict in its entirety, the U.S. was kind of a late entry.
Right.
They were kind of playing the field on both sides, but then Japan was like, we can't get close enough to get to you, but we will get Hawaii because that's the halfway point.
Right.
That's also deeply reductive because they also had, in the process of Pearl Harbor, killed, a lot of Navy people and, kind of messed up the US's, Navy fleet, low-key. It was, a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But up until that point, America was like, no, we don't want to get involved. We don't want to get involved. Turning back ships of refugees coming over from Europe and, stuff like that. So at that point, they got involved, and then everything wraps up, I want to say, in August of 1945, something like that.
And then we got to drop the bombs so that we can stop Russia from getting involved in South Korea.
What? The logic was not It wasn't there.
I mean, it was just selfish. It was like, we can get a whole thing. But look up the history of what went into the Korean War, because us dropping the bobs, that was about Korea. Ugh. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So they're excited to finish off the Japanese. Quote, some would go upstairs to Hazel's mother to have their fortunes read or to buy charms from Marie Levesque, the famous Gris queen. Is this a thing?
So limited knowledge, I will say, but I know what this is. So this is kind of like the perception that people have about people who do like voodoo or hoodoo or something like that, which are two different things, by the way. But it kind of falls under that. So you will go to this person to get like a luck charm or a love thing or something. And so like that could sometimes look like, putting certain items that might have a spiritual or, some sort of quality to them, like in a little bag, and call it like a gris bag. And it's like a thing you carry around or put under your pillow or wherever you're supposed to put it, is like the loosest definition of it. So more or less, she's kind of giving Marie Laveau kind of elements, which I think is interesting that he chose to name her Marie Levesque.
Yeah. Who is Marie Laveau?
So Marie Laveau was like this incredible person in the mid 1800s in New Orleans. She was kind of has this reputation of being like a voodoo queen of sorts, but kind of does what Hazel's mom does, but successful, and also did like other stuff. She has a very interesting life. I am being really reductive for the sake of time, but please look her up. Her story is really fascinating. But interesting thing about her, she has 2 tombs in the same cemetery, and people aren't sure which one she's buried in because the one that everyone thinks is hers, allegedly, according to a cemetery tour that I walked behind one time, apparently the one everyone leaves gifts in front of and put X's on the thing, that might not be where she's actually buried. She may be buried on the other side of the cemetery, away from that, just because people would disturb, her resting place or something. Ooh. So really interesting. This cemetery also has like this pyramid mausoleum looking thing that allegedly would have been used in National Treasure 3 back when that was a big deal. Unconfirmed. There's a rumor that it's only there because like National Treasure, they were going to do it in New Orleans, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. That's the thought, but I don't know if that's true.
Interesting. I love it. Anyway, Percy Jackson. And then we have narrator Hazel recounting a customer being excited that his good luck charm he bought from her was a real silver nugget. And these sorts of comments were good press for her mom, and yep, it's from Hazel's curse. And it seemed like a blessing at first, the occasional precious stone or piece of gold, but then the stories turned sour as people realized bad things were happening to those who tried to use these charms. Quote, Charlie Gasco lost his arm in a harvester while wearing a gold bracelet. Mr. Henry at the general store dropped dead from a heart attack after Queen Marie settled her tab with a ruby. So, seems not ideal. People started murmuring about Hazel and her ability to find cursed jewels simply by walking down the street. And it got to a point where only tourists would visit her mother, and her mother now has a disdain for Hazel. And I think that's unfair because she's using Hazel for the gems and stuff. So, I don't know. Why are you upset? It just seems like you should be blaming someone else. And then as the chapter goes on, we can kind of see where her anger might be really directed. Mm-hmm. So Hazel, back in the story, tried to sneak upstairs in case her mom was with a customer, and as she approached, she thought she heard 2 voices. But when she peeked in, she saw her mom alone at the seance table with her eyes closed as if she was in a trance. And this isn't a rare occurrence, but Hazel has seen it usually when her mom is doing it as an act for customers. And her mother has told Hazel that what she does isn't real, it's not true magic. But Hazel does know that her mom believed in some magic, and she knew that her own curse wasn't bunk and hokum, which is what her mom called her act that she did.
And I just want to say that is such an old-timey, like...
I've never heard it.
I have heard it before, but only amongst, like, elder boomer people. Like, Great Depression type. It's like an old way to people say, like, oh, that's BS,
Yeah. It's definitely going to be one of those things where I've never heard it, and then someone's going to say it tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things that I think it might be like a regional thing too, low key. Like maybe if you lived in certain spots, people were more likely to say it than if you lived in other places. But yeah, when I heard that, I was like, gosh, I feel like I'm in a nursing home right now.
Now, Hazel's mom always put the blame on her father, quote, coming here in his fancy silver and black suit, the one time I actually summoned his spirit, and what do I get? Fulfills my wish and ruins my life. I should have been a real queen. It's his fault you turned out this way. And her mom never explained further, and Hazel knew never to pry because it would only make her mom angrier. And then Hazel, back in the story, watched her mom mutter to herself. And then she said, quote, you'll be safe there, far from the gods. And Hazel wanted to scream because this voice that was coming from her mother's mouth was not her mother's voice. It was an older woman's, quote, soft and soothing, but also commanding, like a hypnotist giving orders. So this is for sure Gia. Not good. Not what we want. Then back in her mom's normal voice, she said, it's too far, too cold, too dangerous. He told me not to. And I'm wondering, is this the cover? I know the cover is someone with black hair in a very icy, snowy situation. So I'm wondering if this is what's going on. Well, if this is. And then back to the other voice. What has he ever done for you? He gave you a poisoned child, but we can use her gift for good. We can strike back at the gods. You'll be under my protection in the north, far from the gods' domain. I'll make my son your protector. You'll live like a queen at last. And then her mom said, but what about Hazel? And then both voices in unison said, a poisoned child.
That's gotta be real wild to hear your mom say.
Yeah, don't want that.
Like, you already know she doesn't like you. You don't know why, but to hear her refer to you as a poisoned child, I did not ask to be here, girl. I did not ask to be here. Like, you think I wanted this?
Hazel then ran down the stairs and ran into a man in a dark suit at the bottom. He held her by the shoulders and tried to calm her down, and it's Hades. He's got a skull ring. He's got the souls trapped in his clothes pattern, which is always the coolest, and I hope they incorporate that into the TV show. Didn't find its way into season 1. Gonna need it the next time Hades shows up.
Whoever did the special effects for Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest, specifically Davy Jones, we need you.
Come on.
We need you, okay?
Come through. Quote, his skin was so white it looked almost blue, like cold milk. I wouldn't call cold milk blue, but okay.
Ay, caramba.
He had a flap of greasy black hair. His smile was kind enough, but his eyes were fiery and angry, full of mad power. Hazel had seen that look in the newsreels at the movie theater. This man looked like that awful Adolf Hitler. He had no mustache, but otherwise he could have been Hitler's twin or his father. Did we really need to revisit this? I know we brought this up in the first 5 books with the whole, the war and the pact and the children of Hades or the Axis powers. Like, I get that was like a thing to kind of retcon history, blah, 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 whatever. Feels like we could have just not had that going on.
No.
Do we really need to be reminded of this?
No, and I think that, like, I guess if that's her only frame of reference, sure. But I just didn't think it was that deep. I was like, you could have said, like, he just looked like a slippery and oily looking guy.
Right.
Like,
it's just so wildly unnecessary, but it's like a weird thing where Rick has to be like, remember that thing?
Remember, it's 1940
introduced?
something.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know. There's just something weird about making the Nazis a godly thing. It's just strange.
It's uncool. It's very...
Yeah. I don't have a lot of gripes with these series, but that thing is just kind of like, I don't know.
What is that
And
about?
again, like, it doesn't really come up in the rest of the chapter. So, like, why do we care?
Yeah.
I don't know. Hazel tried to get away from him, but she was captivated by his gaze. He said, Hazel, Levesque, you've grown. And Hazel then got nervous, so a gem sprouted from the concrete step. Hades went down to grab it, and Hazel tried to stop him by shouting that it's cursed. And Hades grabs it anyway and says that he knows it's cursed, but he says it's not cursed for him. Quote, I'm sorry for your fate, child. I imagine you hate me. And then narrator Hazel, it says, Hazel didn't understand. Hazel, come on. Come on, Hazel. I know you're 12 turning 13, but come on.
I think Hazel is also like, who the hell is this white man at my door? Like, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
it is nighttime. Like, what is going on?
I guess that could be, if she's not going to be like, this pasty pale milkman is going to be my father.
Because she's already saying he's the whitest person she's ever laid her eyes on. So I know she's like,
He looked like he didn't season his food.
No, literally.
This guy thought bell peppers were spicy. Yeah.
Dude, have we ever had Hades eat anything spicy just to confirm if...
He thought black pepper counted as a, spicy pepper.
Oh my gosh.
But then, like 2 sentences later, she puts it together, and then he does a big reveal in case the reader doesn't get it. Quote, I am Pluto. Life is never easy for my children, but you have a special burden. Now that you're 13, we must make provisions. And that's a weird thing to say to a 13-year-old. Hazel grew angry, pushing his hand away and yelling at him for cursing her and abandoning her and her mom. She called him evil and said he ruined their lives. Pluto asked her if her mother ever explained her wish or why Hazel is cursed. And I kind of like that Pluto immediately is like, whoa.
Talk to your mom about that one.
Not my fault.
You know what that just made me think of? Do you know that TikTok sound where it's like, how the hell am I supposed to know? Ask your mama.
I do not know it because I've still never downloaded TikTok because I'm a bitter Viner who still has the Vine camera app that doesn't work on his phone.
Oh, wow.
It's right there. It does nothing.
Wow.
If you open it, it gives you an error message. I will never delete it. You can pry it from my cold, dead hands.
Please look up that sound because I promise you it applies.
Okay. I will have to see if I can do it in browser mode on TikTok, the only thing I use. So Pluto continued. He was able to tell that her mom didn't say anything. So then he says, you were born too soon. I cannot see your future clearly, but someday you will find your place. A descendant of Neptune will wash away your curse and give you peace. I fear, though, that is not for many years. Now, this is, of course, all nonsense to Hazel at this point in time. Pluto then made a notepad and colored pencils appear in his hand. He said that he knows that she likes art and horseback riding. So those are for the art. And then he said for the horse, well, she will have to manage herself. So, she's 13. You're giving her stuff to color with and then saying, sorry, I can't get you a horse. Great job, Dad. Cool gifts, Dad.
He's so annoying. Hades is so annoying. Like, at least Poseidon at least cosplays like he cares about the kids he left behind. Zeus is just like, girl, you should just be lucky you're even here right now. Just be lucky you're not a mayfly girl, because it could be worse. Like, he turned his daughter into a tree because he thought that was saving her. And then you have Hades who shows up. It's like, hey, girl, no, you've never met me a day in your life and wouldn't be able to pick out my face in a lineup. But I'm your dad, and here's some paint. And maybe ask your mom why she hates you so much. And I'm just
it's reminiscent of the Maria D'Angelo thing where he comes in and is being reasonable in the present tense. Mm-hmm. But if you look to the past of him bringing this entire situation upon them, you don't get to be like, well, I'm being reasonable now. No, man, you brought us into this world and it's a terrible situation because you're Hades. So you don't get to be like, I'm being normal now. Yes. You're being unreasonable. Like, no, dude, you're being unreasonable by existing and meddling with mortals. You don't get to do this.
And I think it's so interesting that I think I remember Nico and Bianca's mom saying something like she wished that he could take her to the underworld so she could be there with him. Mm-hmm. And he was like, girl, I got a wife. Like... And I find it interesting that Hazel's mom is like low-key saying the same, I should be a queen, like blah blah blah.
That's
I'm like, dude, gosh. Control yourself. You have 2 women saying that they want to be married to you. You already have a wife who doesn't want to be there. Like, what are you doing, sir?
It's all mixed up. Come on, man. Get it together. Get it together. So Hades continued. He wished Hazel a happy birthday and then told her that he must talk to her mother. And narrator Hazel says, he turned and headed up the stairs just like that, as if he'd checked Hazel off his to-do list and had already forgotten her. Happy birthday. Go draw a picture. See you in another 13 years. This is fun. Fun teenage angst. Mm-hmm. Justified teenage angst. Mm-hmm. At this point, Hazel just was frozen at the steps. She wanted to chuck the gifts and kill Pluto and run away with Sammy and steal a horse and never return, but she did none of that. Instead, she went up to see what their conversation would be. And it was an argument. Pluto said what Marie wanted was insane because he could not protect her if she went through with it. She accused him of never protecting her. He said that she had no idea what he had done to keep her and Hazel alive. Marie yelled that the town wants to hang her as a witch and Hazel's curse is worsening. And then she says to him, your protection is killing us. Pluto began to plead. Marie was having none of it and said they were going north. Pluto warned that it was a trap. quote, whoever's whispering in your ear, whoever's turning you against me. And then I'm realizing, okay, yeah, definitely 100% Gaia in this situation. The ear whispering makes it pretty clear. Marie then chucked a vase at him and gems all spilled out. And she said that he's the one who turned her against him. Pluto told her she won't survive if she goes north. He said that he can foresee they'd both die. She yelled for him to get out. Hazel was rooting for Pluto to stay because she thought that her mom's idea was not good and she didn't want her to go through with it. Quote, but her father slashed his hand across the air and dissolved into shadows like he really was a spirit. Oh.
I love how Hades was like, girl, I'm not about to argue with you. I'm leaving.
Yeah, he was just like, all right, fine. All right, you know what? Fine. Okay, fine. You're being unreasonable. Fine.
He just
this conversation's over.
Yeah, he just like so put upon, like, I brought you some paint. I bought you some paintbrushes. I walk up in here with my nice little suit on. You got a problem. No, like, dude, you're an absent father.
You know, he whooshed back into his place and then hung up his jacket on the hook and is just pacing, talking to himself. I tried. I tried. Right? I tried. She won't listen to me. I tried. And then he turns on his PlayStation and plays Call of Duty and takes his anger out on 12-year-olds on the internet.
I could totally see Hades being like, child support. Our daughter can make gems. She'll be fine. And then him being surprised that, like, oh, it's cursed. Oh, that's unfortunate. Sorry.
Well, you're not cursed, right? So it doesn't matter. It's just other mortals. Whatever. Mm-hmm. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Marie then called for Hazel to come out from behind the door, so she knew that she was there. She then told her to pack a bag because they are moving. And Hazel asked where, and her mom said, Alaska. And I was like, Alaska? But also, why is Alaska out of the realm of the gods' protection? They're just like, ooh, too cold. Ooh.
Montreal was also a little far out of the realm.
Quebec City's okay. I mean, I don't know. It's Alaska. They're too far. It's on a separate thing on the map. It's in that different rectangle thing.
They just really want you to try to be like, why? Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah. So Queen Marie said that they're going to Alaska to start a new life. And Hazel thought that the way that her mother said it, it sounded like they were going to create a new life for someone else or something else. So Hazel really does think at this point that something nefarious is going on. So Hazel asked, what did Pluto mean? Is he really my father? He said you made a wish. And then, in classic mom fashion, her mom went, go to your room, pack. So just got nothing. Maybe Chiron went back in time to get to Hazel's mom. And then it says Hazel fled and suddenly she was ripped out of the past. So just to clarify, does that mean Hazel didn't go to her room and said in the past she ran away from home and then that's the end of the story here?
No. It means that when she went to her room, that was the end of the flashback. So now she's been, because remember she was standing next to Nico talking and she all of a sudden slipped into it.
Just because it said Hazel fled, I was confused. Because to me, fleeing doesn't seem like she was listening to her. It seems like she was going away.
I think it means fleeing the same room as her mom, but he tries to link it into her also coming out of the thing.
Gotcha. So then we're back into the present and Nico is kind of shaking Hazel and he says to her, you did it again. And then Hazel blinks. They're still sitting on the roof of Pluto's shrine and the sun was lower in the sky. So time had passed, but there were even more diamonds around her and her eyes are stinging from crying. She says sorry and Nico says don't be and asks where were you? And she says my mother's apartment the day we moved. Nico nods. He understands her history better than most people could. Then narrator Hazel continues, quote, he was also a kid from the 1940s. He'd been born only a few years after Hazel and had been locked away in a magic hotel for decades. But Hazel's past was much worse than Nico's. She'd caused so much damage and misery. Nico tries to warn her that she needs to control these memories and gives the example of, look, if a flashback like this happened when you're in combat, she says she knows, then she's trying. Then Nico squeezes her hand and assures her that it's okay. He thinks that it's a side effect from ... your time in the underworld. Hopefully it'll get easier. So
interesting.
At this point I'm thinking okay, probably means that she did die at some point. And then her version of being in the hotel was being dead. And then she was brought back by the Gia stuff.
Interesting.
Hazel, as the narrator, says she's not so sure. Quote, after 8 months, the blackouts seemed to be getting worse, as if her soul were attempting to live in 2 different time periods at once. No one had ever come back from the dead before, at least not the way she had.
Ooh.
Nico was trying to reassure her, but neither of them knew what would happen. So, very intrigued. Very, very, very intrigued. I'm very glad we're going to get 2 more Hazel chapters. But at this point, I'm just worried that next chapter is going to be like, okay, guys, it's war games, and we don't learn anything about Hazel. Hazel then says to Nico that she can't go north again. She doesn't want to go back to where it happened. It happened. So when that line said it happened, then it's like, okay, yeah, I'm guessing maybe she did flee to her room. Maybe, but whatever. She did go along with her mother. So, okay. All right. Somehow she did go along. Not ideal. Nico then says that she'll be fine. She has friends this time. Percy Jackson, he's got a role to play. Can't you sense it? He's a good person to have at your side. And then Hazel remembers that Pluto said that a descendant of Neptune would wash away the curse and give her peace. And now she's wondering, is Percy the one? But she just feels like, I don't know, it's just not that easy. I don't know if Percy can even survive what we're facing up there. And then she asks, where did he come from? Why did the ghosts call him the Greek? And before Nico can respond, horns blow across the river.
Chiron
Legionnaires
on the speaker
are
system.
gathering for muster. Yes, thank you. Chiron's like, oh, no, just stop right there. And then Nico says, quote, we'd better get down there. I have a feeling tonight's war games are going to be interesting. So yes, we're getting war game chapters, which are very cool. But if you had polled me before reading these chapters and you were like, oh, hey, war games are going to come on and it might derail the stuff you learned in the first 2 chapters, I'd be like, whatever, cool, it's war games. It's going to be awesome. These 2 chapters were so good that I am worried about war games. Like, can we have the war games, but can we also have Hazel telling us more about her cool backstory? Because I'm on the edge of my seat here. And if we get 2 war games chapters with no backstory and then Frank talks to me for 4 chapters, I'm sorry, Frank, I'm sure you're great, but like, I don't know, man. I really got to know. So Hazel, got me wrapped around her finger.
Everyone in like the new people, they all got some real interesting parenting stories.
Yes.
Like, I know all demigods have some interesting parenting stories, but these guys, I'm just like, so that, wow. Okay.
Rick's been cooking. He's really been cooking. Yeah. So that is the end of that chapter, which I have retitled just to go as much New Orleans as we can, because Kelly's family's from New Orleans. So I've got a little bit of New Orleans knowledge and such. So what I've retitled chapter 7 is Who Dat Say De Gon Be My Dad? Which is a reference of
no notes.
Who Dat Say De Gon Beat Dem Saints?
Yes. Apparently the whole NFL, but
oh no. Are they bad now? I don't watch football.
We won like the first 2 games and have lost the next 3 since. But to be fair, yesterday we played the Kansas City football team, so
I do know about them because
I mean,
Kelly's big Taylor Swift fandom.
So I mean, okay, but it's just it's a tough time for us right now.
It's okay. Can never take away the legacy of Drew Brees. It will live forever.
You know what? That's the best thing is, like, I happen to get, oh my gosh, this is the most New Orleans story ever. So the year they won the Super Bowl, we went to New Orleans for Mardi Gras, and he was the grand marshal of one of the parades.
Of course.
I think it was like him and Anderson Cooper.
Of course.
The parade kind of fell really close to Valentine's Day, so the whole parade was like Valentine's themed.
Cute.
And Drew Brees threw a stuffed heart at me that said Happy Valentine's Day, and he waved at me, and I lost my marbles. I was like, gosh. I was like, this is the most New Orleans thing ever.
It's great. I absolutely love it. And that's fantastic. Do you have a retitling of chapter 7?
You really, that's no notes.
Okay, great.
No
fantastic. Well, Jania, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thank you for listening. Jania, if people want to find you doing stuff, where can they find you doing stuff?
You can find me saying stuff on Twitter, and it's _Artemis. But my new podcast that I'm launching hopefully at the end of October is at Fandom Fixation Archives on Instagram. So over the next few weeks, I'm going to be posting stuff about, the first few episodes and what they're going to be about. And I am so excited for that. So looking forward to things, and yeah.
I'm glad. The podcasting space needs more of you, so I'm glad that you are getting back into that space. But thank you so much for joining for this time. This was a hoot and a half and a wonderful time.
Yes.
I appreciate all the listeners for listening as well. And until next time, when we have war games, but hopefully, I don't want to root for Hazel to, go through a flashback and maybe get attacked, but like, I wouldn't be too upset if this aforementioned Nico, what if it happens in the middle of battle? Mid-war game flashbacks, we can learn more about Hazel. I'll be okay with that as long as she doesn't die. Hopefully she's okay.
If it doesn't happen then, it'll happen when she's asleep.
Oh, God, yeah. You got to take a quick nap, right? Please, come on, dreams.
You will take a quick nap.
Nap, please. Clovis, come on over and get her to nap. Anyway, until we figure out what's going on, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamontes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you love the podcast and you just can't get enough, there's a couple of different things you can do. First, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. You can join the Patreon, and you can get access to a whole bunch of fun bonus content. You can also follow us on social media. We're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. There's also a subreddit, reddit.com/r/thenewestolympian. And there's also the TNO Discord, which you get access to by joining any TNO tier on the Patreon. You can learn all about the show at thenewestolympian.com, and you can get some sweet TNO merch at thenewestolympian.com/merch. I've mentioned the Patreon, so let's give a shout out to our producer level patrons: Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Vicky Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Sabrina Balsiger, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayer, Josh Wilkie, Abby Ryan, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, Sandkoff, Rika, Ryla Matthews, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, Grace, Ginger Spurs Boy, A Cup of Solace, Bradimus Prime, Skylar Sisters, Scott Sheldon, Sophie, Natanya Page, Ann M. Thayer Cohen, Bella, Percy Jackson, Han, Haley Hingelheimer Schmidt, Catherine Sloan, Jessica Phillips, Haley Mary, Jim Jam Koopy, Kit Kat Crumbs, and Andrea, not Andrea. If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, just tell someone about the podcast. It really does help a lot, whether that is you reaching out to someone directly who you think might enjoy the podcast. Maybe they're a big Percy Jackson fan. Maybe they've been looking for an excuse to read the books. Or if you post about the show on social media, or you leave us a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. Truly, all of these things help. I really appreciate anyone who has done it in the past, and I also appreciate anyone who will do it in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode, where we'll be joined live in Boston by Liam Crowley to discuss chapters 7 and 8 of The Son of Neptune. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So as mentioned, I'm in my mom's car, and I'm just gonna not turn on the car, but I'm gonna hit some buttons and stuff. There's what would be the blinker. There's what would be the windshield wiper. Here's me turning the air conditioning knob. Here's me pushing some of the buttons on the radio. Thank you so much for listening.